Welcome to Cyber909, your source for wit and wisdom in cybersecurity and beyond. On this podcast, your host, veteran chief security officer and cyber aficionado Den Jones, taps his vast network to bring you guests, stories, opinions, predictions, and analysis you won't get anywhere else. Join us for Cyber909, soon to become 909 Exec. New name, same podcast.
Well, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cyber909, your podcast for all sorts of mad random stuff related to cyber, but mainly leadership, surviving and thriving, and making sure we don't try and shoot ourselves along the journey. So this episode, we've got Matej Zahar. Is that how I pronounce her last name? Just before funny, I'm struggling on the first name, and then I'm like, oh man, you know. Now, the interesting thing is you guys are going to detect a little bit of an accent here. Not my accent, Matej's accent. So, Matej, why don't you introduce yourself? Where do you work? Where do you live? And I want to get into this whole journey as you've been traveling around Europe.
Sure, absolutely, and great to be here, Dan. So I'm originally from Slovakia. Which used to be Czechoslovakia, is how most people figure out where that is and which part of the world. I was born in Czechoslovakia, but that didn't last for very long. So I work as a CIO and a CSO for a company called Content.ai, which is a headless CMS provider, kind of a backbone for for websites and things aimed at content management. And I'm based out of Ireland. So I'm currently living in Dublin, but I traveled a bit. So I lived in Slovakia, obviously, then Czech Republic, then Switzerland, and now so this is my fourth country. Yeah, so that's it.
And it's funny, right, Matej? I think I've done some traveling. And it just reminds me that, back in Europe, you can bounce between country and stuff. But for me, it seems like the CISO version of van life, right? So when you've been traveling, well, before we get to that, what got you into this IT security journey? So when you're leaving school or whatever you were doing, what was the trigger that pulled you into this career?
Right. So it was back in the time when I was actually picking my subjects in university, and I was one of the first cohorts that went through formal cybersecurity education. So I can, it has been a while. So it's probably 12 years ago or something. But it was one of the first things, one of the first cohorts that went through that cybersecurity masters. And it was really out of curiosity. I mean, I saw cryptography there. It sounded cool. I mean, who doesn't want to do cool stuff, right? So then I found that it was mostly math. I got a little bit discouraged, but I found something in it. I found something that got me engaged for about those 15 years, or I don't know how long I've been around.
Wow. And then when you've done your first country move, what was it that made you move?
So I suppose the first move was for the university, and was the quality of education that really made a difference. And so that here, you said it right. So here in Europe, it's more condensed, but many different countries. And when I was picking my school, it was already European Union was around and it was expanding, and so it really opened up opportunities, right, for people to travel around, to study around, and also work wherever they want to be. So that's how I did it. And then I stayed in Czech Republic for a while. I studied there, and I got my first job. And I worked a little bit in Czech Republic. I was traveling a lot back then because I was working for a cybersecurity vendor. And then, I suppose it's also the love for travel, right? And exploring new places, meeting new people is what eventually got me into multiple moves in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can tell that you can speak good Irish, right? But when you went to the other when you've went to the other countries, they don't all speak English as their primary language, right? So how did you handle the language barrier?
So Czech Republic was easy, right? Because the languages are very similar, but and now I speak like fluently Czech. I mean, it's not a huge achievement for somebody from my part of the world, but I can. And then in Switzerland, it's a little bit different. They have 4 languages. None of them is English, but they do have a huge expat community. So when I was there, it was very. So it was very easy to kind of get by on a work setting, I would say. And I was working for an international company back then. So, English was also how they communicated internally. But I know, so I have some basics of German. I was communicating some German with them. But you need to be, I suppose, English will, English will help you long way in any setting, let's say in Europe. But it's where if you want to engage with people more, you probably need to start, getting bits and pieces of language here and there, just so that you show that you are really interested in, the culture and the country and the language as well. So yeah, and then obviously there are places where you can't speak English, so you need to manage those. Yeah,
I was in the south of France once for a project back in 1996, I think it was. Yeah. And I remember the hotel I was at in the south of France, they didn't speak any English at all. And I didn't speak any French. Now, because of that lack of communication, I didn't have any lunch or dinner. And I pretty much waited until my friend picked me up, probably about 8 o'clock at night, to do like dinner and drinks and stuff. But I went like 12 hours without eating.
Yeah.
And I was asking them for food, and I just didn't get any. And the thing about our role, right, is communication's a huge thing. So when you're trying to sell vision, when you're building teams, when you're trying to do what we do, then what was the biggest struggle from a communication perspective?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I would say that it's more cultural than language related, even though you need to pick your words carefully in English as well. And you would have some nuances of English, even from like foreigners. Obviously, like English is not my first language, so I would have my nuances and the way I talk about things. So, for example, like in kind of the German-speaking world, the people tend to be a little bit more negativistic. So you need to choose language that kind of reflects that. I just remember back then, one of my colleagues were saying like they had this saying it gets, which is like it's all right, it's okay, and that's like that means the best. It's the best it could be. It's a really it's excellent, it's brilliant, it cannot be any better. And they can go to really like deep connotation of how bad some things are, right? So that scale is, I suppose, a little bit moved. So you need to be aware of those things, and then obviously like if you do chit chat, if you don't do chit chat, if you go straight to the point, if you don't, if you speak out of your mind, and tell people what you really think, or whether you kind of use some fancy language to describe your thoughts. So you need to be aware of those, but they're more cultural, I would say, than language related. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought for a minute there you were describing Scottish people, but then I realized you weren't. Pessimist, grumpy, and and then one of the things that I was interested in when we were setting up the show was, you're traveling around Europe, you've got a great connection in that whole European community. When we talk about things like AI, how are you seeing European governments, European businesses, or even just people in the teams, how are you seeing them approach AI? How do you think that's different from how people in the US are talking about it?
Yeah, I suppose I can feel a little bit more cautiousness and a little bit more risk aversion, or risk, let's call it risk management. I would say that people are generally open to try new things and to engage with AI, but they feel in general that there needs to be some governance over it, so they don't just jump over the next fancy tool immediately without thinking. But I might be a little bit biased because I deal mostly with our enterprise customers, which are very risk averse, or they like to think things through before they allow them in their environment. And also with the community here, which is also kind of very enterprise heavy. There's lots of US companies here, and usually those that they are internationals and kind of operate here in Ireland. So that's my experience so far. But I can see that there are many startups also being created in Europe, and one general feeling is that there is a little bit of kind of the support for innovation and the overall, how the innovation is treated is a little bit different in Europe, and we feel like the regulatory environment here is a little bit more puts a little bit more barriers towards that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because you're heavy into the privacy side of the world, right? So if I look at your career, you've featured a lot as you kind of go through risk and governance and all that kind of stuff, and you're in an environment where data governance or PII and all this stuff, especially with privacy laws around the world, they're pretty heavy. I'd say they're heavier in Europe than they are in the US. And I'll keep talking while you're trying not to die over there. So if you're back alive, so when you think of privacy and the difference between Europe markets and the US and with AI, what are you seeing from their the biggest privacy concerns?
So sorry about that. Jeez, that was very unfortunate. Drink of what? Jesus, I don't know what's happening.
And everyone just realized Matej's drinking. He's really drinking vodka, and he's just saying it's water.
Yeah, it looks like vodka, right? But sorry about that. So so in terms of privacy, I would say that there's definitely the cautiousness about what kind of data do we feed our AI systems? Like, what happens with personal information? How do we treat that? And I would say in the very initial scenarios, everybody was like, okay, we will never ever feed our customer databases. We will never ever let AI model work on our personal information. But it is slowly changing, I would say, over time as some of the myths surrounding AI and the way it's laid out, how they disappear over time, and how they are mitigated with the new kind of safeguards and controls that companies in general, AI providers, are able to demonstrate. So I would say that this perspective is changing, but obviously there is that ever-present question of where the data is, what happens with it. Is that a new data processing, and if it is, what kind of risk does it bring, right? So there's that risk-based kind of perception of personal data processing here in Europe, and we like to use that terminology to also refer to data processing. So that's my perspective.
I mean, I look at it like we're still dealing with a lot of the same security questions or privacy questions that we had before, and all we've maybe done is we've added a few more. So if you think of where we stored the data before, it was just how do we store the data and protect the data while it's being stored, right? And then you talk about encryption and all that stuff, but we're now also talking about data poisoning. We're kind of looking at that extra element of maybe the data that we've been using is poisoned or something of that nature. Then when you run models against the data, it's how trusted are those models, and then at the end of it, you've got the users that interact with it or other APIs and things of that nature, and how do we protect those? So some of the things, I think, some of the risks remain the same, and then and in each of those areas we've maybe added incremental risk on top. Now you guys, so content AI, I think I was reading up that you guys are doing some AI within there. I mean, your name suggests it, right? So what would you say is the AI magic that you guys are doing that differentiates you from the competition?
Yeah, so, and by the way, I just wanted to comment that you're exactly right. Like, I feel that many of the risks and safeguards that we put in place in terms of AI are the same kind of risks that we've identified before, and the safeguards that we identified before, whether it's, risk management, risk analysis, whether it's just really like having a security by default approach to software development. And that's what I would really vouch for. But yeah, anyway, so what our implementation is, so we use AI for various things. So as a content management system, we manage large quantities of content, whether that is, articles, blog posts, pictures, videos, whatever our customers use to present on their websites and their applications, but also for their internal use as well. And so we deal with a large scale content data sets, and so we use AI in order to manage that like the best you can on scale. So to give you an example, search, translation, categorization, flagging, tagging, all sorts of things that it would be terrible to do that manually, because you would spend a really lot of time categorizing or classifying your content. So we can just basically flag like similar pieces of content. We can give you suggestions based on the content that you've already created. We can generate content that will follow the tone of voice that you used before. So things like that, or reviews. But translations is a big thing, right? So you would have nowadays, and that comes back to the cultural perspective, right? You would have companies communicating to their audience in various languages, and you really need to be mindful about how that happens. And there is and you need to have the same kind of structure and the tone in all those languages, while you need to also be able to do quick translations to target different audiences. So that's where we are at, and that's where I see also where we can help our customers the most.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And you guys sit at the back end of people's environments, right? So they're using APIs to get to your platform.
Yeah. So that's the headless, definition. Is that we are API based, really cloud based, and we operate on the back end. We just manage all your content, and doesn't really matter where you display it, whether it's an app or website or whatever that is. Yeah,
that's excellent. So one of the things, you get involved in a lot of mentoring, a lot of. I do know one thing is, you guys have got like awards you've been winning over the years. You've got another award, I think, just now that about the security team. So it seems to me, from a community perspective and the give back to the industry, you're fairly active. So what do you think, from a responsibility of the next generation of leaders, how do you think we can do better to like bring in new talent, bring in diversity? I mean, from any of that perspective, what do you want to share with everybody there?
Yeah, and it's hard, right? I mean, these are difficult things, especially considering like we are all busy professionals. We have a lot on our plates, and I would say just making that part of your priorities is something that is great place to start. But also appreciating that there's a lot of value to be taken, for example, from the mentor-mentee relationship, also on the side of mentor. I learned great things from my mentees so I do mentoring. Just a full disclosure, I do mentoring for a nonprofit called Women for Cyber. So I have one permanent mentee, and then I will be onboarding another one this year. And so I was involved in those activities in the past. So I would say that I often learn a great deal of things from my mentees just because they work in some particular niche that I haven't touched before. So I was, for example, I had one mentee that was very, very deep into privacy and kind of like she was expanding her career in kind of privacy management, but in public services. And so I was, it was really interesting for me to kind of explore that area, which I was untouched with before. Then of course you meet all sorts of different personalities and people. So I would definitely encourage everyone that has that opportunity, those, I don't know, that 1 hour per week or month or whatever you can dedicate to really explore those like mentor-mentee relationships. It's great also to bringing, diversity and the talent to the industry, because there is lots of, I learned through the process that there is lots of, especially females through this nonprofit, that want to get into cybersecurity and don't know how, or they want to advance their career, and again, like they're struggling to understand how or where they should go. So I think giving that helping hand would be great. Dedicating, just making it a priority, like dedicating some time.
And yeah, when you're thinking of onboarding a mentor, mentee, when you're onboarding a new mentee, what do you look for in them that makes you believe that that's a valuable spend of your time?
Right. Well, definitely willingness to learn and willingness to make some change happen in their lives, right? So that's the basis, because if you don't have that established, then there is probably not much you can do, because that mentoring, it brings change to your life, right? Like you will be thinking about things that you haven't before, right? So I would be looking at that, and then really, like, I'm not really particular about these things. Like the more effort both parties put into it, the more can come out of it. So I ask for that willingness to put effort in it and for that time. And if that is established, I'm pretty open about everything else.
And do you kind of have a set agreed time limit, like you're going to work together for a year, or do you not care about that?
I would say it depends on the mentee. So through this program, so it would be 6 months engagements, which I find quite okay. It's enough time to make something happen, and then if it's not really work out, or if it doesn't have a strong future, you can just cut after those 6 months. Or if you feel that there has not been a great fit, but you can obviously like identify that at the beginning and just cut it off. But I find the six months time as a reasonable time frame to get to know someone. And as I said, like I have another mentee that I am working with on a like more permanent basis for a longer time now. So.
Yeah. So, and at any one point, is it like one or two? I guess. I mean, I'm guessing that's all time based, right? If you can take on more, you'll take on more. But ultimately, you've got a day job as well, and a life, and a family, and all the shit outside of work. So.
And I think it's also so. What I've been describing is mostly like this formal mentor relationship, right? But I think one of the great things that I've heard, and I'm trying to use it and apply it in my life as well, is that anybody can be your mentor, really. Like your mentor is your wife, your mentor is your family, your mentor is your friends, so whatever you need an advice and you're not sure like what to do, just ask people around you, right? And it doesn't have to be somebody with, I don't know, long years of experience in cybersecurity to give you a reasonable advice, right? I have a friend that is a doctor, and he has the best. We find the best analogies, between our jobs and trades. That because it's both meeting and working with people, essentially, right? So if you have a people issue, you can definitely like talk with whoever that is, to try to get it.
Well, I think that's it, right? When you get to leadership, then probably 80% of the issues we deal with, they're not about the technologies.
Yeah,
it's about people. It's all about relationships. It's about selling a vision. It's about rallying a team, coming up with a strategy. I mean, there's all these other things, and I don't care. Yeah, like you say, it could be a doctor, it could be anybody. I mean, you could have anybody that's done some form of leadership role still provide you some gems and wisdom and guidance.
Absolutely.
And so when you think of a mentor for you, I mean, do you actively work with people in your circle to get mentorship?
I would say that I'm trying to really work in my circle like actively. So when I'm struggling with something, I ask for advice, I ask for opinion, and that can be, on the workplace, it can be at home, it can be, wherever I am. So I'm trying to really activate those relationships that I already have. But it happened in the past also that I did those like random reaching out to some people that I found their profiles interesting, and I'm like, also I do that for my mentees. So I'm like, okay, you are a whatever chief privacy officer of ABC. Like, can you let me know and help me understand how your team is structured so I can give better advice to my mentee about the company like yours and the structure of a privacy team in an industry like yours, right? So so I raise those questions, and I find we are all busy professionals, but there's always that willingness to help in security. What I found is it's really nice about most security people. We are as busy as we are usually like open to help, unless it's some sort of unsolicited messaging or somebody trying to sell you something.
Oh yeah, and I am. It's funny. I done a sales kickoff with a company called Omnisa, and they're one of the spinouts of VMware, and one of the questions was along the lines of what turns you off when you get an unsolicited communication, and because we're both in our CISO Society group, I threw that out to the group, and I got a whole bunch of replies. And one of them was a reply that I actually hadn't prepared, but we ended up talking about the fact that I shared this within the community. So there was what does Dan think about this question and answers, and then what did the community say, and I had the usual, if it looks like a mass mailing, not personal, you've not done your homework.
Yeah.
But one of the ones that people said was not respecting your boundaries. So pushy salespeople that don't respect your boundaries. I got a text message on a weekend from somebody I didn't even know, but they got my number somehow, and they just thought they would text me on a Saturday and try and sell me their shit. Obviously, that meant that I blocked the number and deleted the text without even replying, right? So when you're getting, what's your definition of a shitty salesperson just annoying you? Like, what do you think the difference between a good salesperson is and a shitty one?
Yeah. So look, I mean, like everything you said is completely valid. Like and also not respecting boundaries on that side. If we never have ever had any like contact before, if you call me first, I'm reluctant to to be open to talk. It's kind of pushy. Definitely like somebody that is pushy. In general, like they would try to oversell you from the moment one. What I appreciate, on the other hand, is someone that takes time to understand the challenges, but also has enough kind of how to call it, tact maybe, to realize that where there is no opportunity for them, right? So to kind of like understand, okay, this is not the place, I'll just cut it off, save everybody's time, and not just follow up after follow up and trying to make up different crazy scenarios of things we could do together where actually none of them resonates, right? So
and I just said to this audience, like, we sniff out disingenuous people pretty quickly. I read people pretty quickly. I think any executive, there's ideally a good level of EQ and being able to like have street smarts and read people. So I don't have a lot of salespeople who are friends. And I'm pretty open about that. Like, I've been doing this shit for 30 years. And in 30 years, I've probably got like 12 phone numbers in my contact list of salespeople, right?
Yeah,
and that means they can contact me anytime they want, and I'll contact them. And you're not pissing me off if you text me on a Saturday, right? But in order to get there, you've got to have built trust. You've got to have really, got to really have impressed and stuff to be the point where I'm like, okay, I can hang out with you. You're decent and you don't piss me off. Just pretty.
I will say one thing is that also what I'm a little bit allergic to is when it's an obvious, obvious sales tactic that they're applying. So what I dislike definitely is being asked questions for half an hour or 45 minutes straight before I know anything about your company. And some of the sales calls really like start like that. What's your challenges? Like how do you? Okay, and they're trying to kind of sell you. I mean, like it's fine that you want to know about me. That's great. That's actually a positive thing. But don't overdo it. Especially without NDA. On the first meeting, I need to learn something about you as much as you need to learn something about me. And sometimes I feel that it's really forced. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because one thing I said to this audience was, if you've only got 30 minutes, that very first meeting, then you got to be curious to understand the problems. But you're right, there's a balance, and I think the balance is you got to understand the audience. Like if you know that the CISO you're talking to doesn't, they don't want to share like all the challenges and struggles they got. Maybe they've already researched your product. Maybe they're calling you in because they know your product does X, Y, and Z, and that's the problem they want solved. And I think it's just, again, it's communication. It's really, this all goes down to that. As we get close on time, Matej, so when you're not working, what do you do for fun? And is there anything in the non-work stuff that translates to helping you improve your professional life?
Yeah, I think I will mention one thing. So I do run on a regular basis, and I'm proud on one thing. If I'm proud on one thing, is that I'm able to keep that cadence even when even when I'm really, really, really busy with everything else. So it's really something that I'm trying to do regularly. And then how it applies and helps me, it's the moment that you clean your head, are able to reflect on some of the things that you wouldn't normally reflect on, and the ideas come to your mind, and very often it happens to me that I come home and then I write down a couple of those things, or I go action some of those things. So I think really having that time to reflect and being on my own in the nature, just running and focusing on that, but also thinking is what helps me kind of bring that balance, I suppose.
I'm guessing, so I don't run, but I do walk. So I'll walk trails and stuff, and I guess the clarity that you get while you're on your own, isolated, even if you listen to music or not, right? You're still in your own head. You're still thinking through problems and stuff. And I say to people, if you can get out 10, 15 minutes, just walk around the block. If you want to just go and I'm not a gym rat. So for me, it's like, don't like, if you go to the gym, there's a lot of distractions at the gym, and you're not necessarily thinking, you're clearing your headspace. So for me, I love nature, just getting out. And I think, we spend too much time cooped up inside our offices, our work, our computers, and our devices. So getting out, I think, is wonderful. So what's next? What's next for you? Do you do any of the conference circuit stuff? Do you come out to the US for any of the events, or like what kind of travel plans do you get to do?
Yeah, I do try to go at least once per year to the US. So I was studying on Carnegie Mellon in this in this great CISO certificate program that they have there, and they do yearly kind of meetings in Pittsburgh. So I normally travel. I don't know this year because so I'm also I'm also studying executive MBA here at Trinity College. So it's really busy these days and weeks for me. So I'm not sure if this year I will be able to travel, but anytime I can, I'm happy to do that. It's necessary to kind of, again, like, open up your mind to new ideas, see what other peers, in the industry do. And we have a fair bit of conferences here in Europe as well. London is just stone throws away, and then and there's a lot going on there. But there's also things here in Dublin. So try to be engaged. Yeah, I know that you have for sure. Your conference calendar must be completely full. If you want, you can have a conference probably every day, right?
Well, it's interesting. You obviously have the big ones between RSA, Black Hat, DevCon, and then there's all the B sides, and then there's all the ISACA and the ISSA stuff, and then there's Cybersecurity Summit, FutureCon, and there's a million of them. It just doesn't, it's funny because I've lived in the US now 25 years or something. It just doesn't feel as glamorous as going to like Barcelona for like a 2-day event and then doing some sightseeing and stuff, because like you going to Pittsburgh, right? When I was at Banyan Security, I done 20 conferences a year as from an evangelism perspective. Yeah. And that shit, man, that gets dry after a while. I mean, and I just went to LA for FutureCon, and my daughter got to hang out with us. She goes to college in LA, so she's hanging out with the team. And I was like, what's funny? I said, every time I was traveling for work, you thought I'm doing something glamorous, like I'm going to LA. I went, now you know how glamorous this shit is. We're sitting there in a hotel at LAX airport, inside conference space. We're not seeing LA. But people think of it like, oh God, you got to go to whatever, right? Chicago. It's like you'll get in the evening, you'll go out for like dinners somewhere. So we went to Marina Del Rey, and that's cool. But again, you're in an Uber going to the place, you have dinner, and then you pretty much Uber back, Sometimes you can spend a little bit of time out there, but some of these events, they're not glamorous, but they are useful. If you can network, you can meet with peers. Usually for me, reconnect with some friends and stuff as well. So I love it. I mean, I love it for that purpose. Sometimes at these events, I always tell my team, try and learn at least one thing. You can come back learning one thing that you can implement the minute you get back, then maybe we'll feel like it was a good spend of your time. But some of these things, it's more about the relationships that you meet with people outside of the sessions and stuff. So I
would say that.
Well, Matej, hey, look, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know our time zones are funky, so for you right now, it's way past your finishing work business. So I appreciate you working late for us. Thank you very much, and I'd love to see you at some point. If I'm in Europe, I'll maybe try and swing by Dublin because it's not far from Scotland. And otherwise, I'd love to catch you in the US. We'll grab some drinks or something.
Yeah, sounds great. Great to be here, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cyber909 will soon become 909 Exec. New name, same podcast you know and love. Look for the new name soon wherever you get your podcasts.